بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. Brothers, inshallah we'll continue the kitab that we were doing, which was on fiqh, siyam, the chapter regarding fasting. But inshallah, bi'idhnillah, because of quite a lot of you are doing i'tikaf, we will cover that topic from the book of Rawd al-Murbi', which is the book that the Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan hafidhahullah summarized in his book Mulakhas Al-Fiqh. So inshallah we'll be covering the chapter title Bab al-I'tikaf, chapter regarding i'tikaf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated this ibadah in the kitab when he says وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ, and do not have intercourse with your wives while you are doing i'tikaf in the masajid. This is something which is thabit, cannot be argued against in the kitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, it is something which is from the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we well mentioned the hadith regarding it. And it's an ibadah that the ummah has agreed upon is part of this deen, ijma'. And that's what Ibn Manzar في الإجماع, he says وأجمعوا على أن الاعتكاف سنة لا يجب على الناس فرضا, that it is consensus that i'tikaf is an act of worship which is sunnah. So what is i'tikaf, barakallahu fikum? What is i'tikaf? I'tikaf linguistically in the Arabic language, it means لزوم الشيء, to be upon something, to be upon something. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran when he says يعكفون على أصنامهم على أصنام لهم, that they sit around or circumlate around or idols that belong to them. So لزوم الشيء, to be upon or around something. But that's not what concerns us. What concerns us is what it means Islamically and shar'an. And shar'an it means لزوم المسجد, to be within the masjid. This is what it means, i'tikaf, to be in the masjid. لطاعة الله, for the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what i'tikaf is. I'tikaf is لزوم مسجد لطاعة الله, to be in the masjid for the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of us here now are in the masjid. Some are reading Quran, some are praying, and others are listening to the dars, and so on. Are we all doing i'tikaf? We are all لزوم المسجد is there, we are in the masjid. لطاعة الله, we're here for the obedience of Allah. So from that definition, yes. But the difference is that with niyyah, with the intention of doing act which is ibadah, which is specific, and that is i'tikaf. So you have to make the niyyah for that. The hukum of it, the hukum and the ruling of i'tikaf is that it is sunnah. and no one says that it is wajib. It is sunnah. And it is sunnah every time. It is not just sunnah in the month of Ramadan. It can be done also outside Ramadan. But it is stressed in the month of Ramadan, specifically in the last 10 days. As the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam made i'tikaf in Shawwal. But the only type of i'tikaf that sallallahu alayhi wasallam continually performed or did was the i'tikaf in the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan. So this is a lot more stressed. I'tikaf as we said, it can be performed and it is sunnah every time throughout the year. So from that, also what we learn is that is it a must for the person to be fasting? Is it a must for the person to be fasting while they do i'tikaf? No. And the proof of this is the hadith Umar radiyallahu anhu, where the hadith is found in Bukhari. Umar radiyallahu anhu said to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya Rasulullah, إني نذرت في الجاهلية أن أعتكف ليلة بالمسجد الحرام. بالمسجد يعني مسجد الحرام. إني نذرت في الجاهلية أن أعتكف. I have made nether, a promise, to make i'tikaf in the days of pre-Islam, بالمسجد, in Masjid al-Haram. Meaning, what shall I do? I made that promise prior to Islam. And the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to him, Ufi binadrik, fulfill your promise. How is this hadith a proof that fasting is not a condition for i'tikaf? Naam. Because he mentioned, Umar radiyallahu anhu said, an a'takifa laylatan, that I promised to make i'tikaf a night. And night is not a time for fasting. So as such, fasting is not a condition. And the reason we mention this is that some of the scholars, like Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, or the followers of the school of Imam Abu Hanifa, say that it is a condition, shart. It is a condition for you to fast, for the i'tikaf, for you to fast. I'tikaf is sunnah, as we said. The hukum of it is sunnah. But it becomes an act which is wajib bin nadr, when a person makes a promise. This is when it becomes wajib. As the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Man nadara an yuti'a Allah falyuti'hu. Whoever makes a promise to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then let him obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in general, i'tikaf is sunnah. But it becomes wajib when the person makes another. Another is something which is, this promise is makruh. It is disliked. And another is a person saying, Oh Allah, if you give me this and this, I shall fast such and such a days, or I shall make umrah, or I shall feed such and such a poor people if you give me this, or if you help me with this. And as the Rasul ﷺ informed us, that nadr does not stem from except from a person who is bakhil in worshipping his Lord. For we should not be put in condition in worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if the person does it and he makes a nadr, a promise to do something, if Allah gives him something, like a person saying, if Allah grants me a child, I shall build a masjid. He must fulfill this promise if he gets the means. As the Rasul ﷺ said, "Man nadara an yuti' Allah falyuti'hu." So this is the moment in which i'tikaf becomes wajib. So far what we covered, barakallahu feekum, is the meaning of i'tikaf linguistically. Luzum shay, to be upon something. We also covered the applied meaning, the Sharia meaning, and it is luzumul masjid li ta'atillah bi niyatin khasa. For you to be in the masjid for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a specific niyyah of doing i'tikaf. And i'tikaf is legislated in the kitab, the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the ijma', the consensus of this ummah. Also i'tikaf is sunnah by the ijma' of this ummah. As we mentioned previously, that the ummah, the consensus of this ummah, that no one says i'tikaf is wajib. Rather it is sunnah. And the time of it is not specific to the month of Ramadan. It can be performed throughout the year, but in the month of Ramadan it is a lot more stressed, specifically in the last 10 days. Fasting is not a condition for doing i'tikaf. And i'tikaf, the only time it becomes wajib is bin nadr, when a person makes a promise. As this ibadah is an ibadah which is sunnah, the wife, if she wants to do i'tikaf, she must obtain the permission of her husband. If he needs her, then he comes first. For his need and fulfilling her duty towards her husband is an act which is wajib. Allah has obligated. And this ibadah is an ibadah which is sunnah. And the wajib of a right, that which is sunnah. As the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, and the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam قال لا يحل لامرأة أن تصوم وزوجها شاهد إلا بإذنه. That it is not halal for a wife or woman to fast Sawm that is sunnah, like Mondays and Thursdays. وَزَوْجُهَا شَاهِدٌ, while her husband is present, إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ, except with his permission. Except with his permission. Does i'tikaf, does it have conditions? When you are doing i'tikaf, do you need to fulfill conditions for you to be able to do i'tikaf? I'tikaf has two conditions that you must fulfill. One, without it la tasih. It's niyyah. as we mentioned in the definition. As the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that all actions are by intention. So if a person comes to the masjid, sits down, reads the Quran, stays here all night, but he has not made the intention for i'tikaf, it will not be considered to be i'tikaf. So his other dhikr is something else, but it will not be considered to be i'tikaf. He must make that specific intention of doing i'tikaf. Just to go back on Kalam Ibn Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi said regarding the hikmah behind it and why it has been legislated. He says, وَشَرَعَ لَهُمْ الْإِعْتِكَافِ الَّذِي مَقْصُودُهُ وَرُوحُهُ عُكُوفُ الْقَلْبِ على الله تعالى وجمعيته عليه وخلوة به والانقطاع عن الاشتغال بالخلق. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated al-i'tikaf الذي مقصوده, that the purpose of it, وروحه, and the spirit of it, عكوف القلب, that the individual brings his heart and mind على الله تعالى, to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وخلوة به والانقطاع, and that he becomes alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, والانقطاع عن الاشتغال الخلق بالخلق, that the individual becomes busy or busies himself with the creation. So as such, a person who makes the niyyah of doing i'tikaf must cut himself off from that which busies himself from the obedience of Allah. To the extent that the scholars, some of the scholars say that a person who is doing i'tikaf must not sit in this kind of jalsa, sitting, even when dars is recited, because the time that he has chosen it to give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to be alone with Allah. That you totally, and some of the scholars exempt it and they say if the dars or the lesson or the kalima that is being said in the masjid is short, then that is exempt. But if it's going to take your time, that time is a time that you decided to give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as such, the individual, when he is making i'tikaf, he must have a specific niyyah. And that niyyah is to be alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to cut himself off from anything that would make him busy in the worldly gains. Especially nowadays, what we have of the internet and the modern phones and modern means, that a person, while he's within the vicinity, the four walls of the masjid, he can still be like a person who is outside, chatting, talking, and his mind busy in reading the news and so on, what's going on. This time that you're doing i'tikaf is a time that you contemplate and you spend in dhikr and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala solely, nothing else. To the extent that you are not even allowed to read, some of the scholars, books of fiqh, books of hadith. Rather, it must be spent in dhikr, recitation of the Quran, contemplation of the Quran, and dua. So as such, it is a niyyah that is specific, not a niyyah to stay and sleep in the masjid like some people do, but rather it is a niyyah to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to be one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as such, what we will find, barakallahu feekum, that this ibadah is not easy. It is a ibadah that is great, but it is a ibadah that is hard. That's why we will find few people who do i'tikaf. It has almost been forgotten, and the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam never left it in any of the Ramadans. But the generations, and now we see that this has been abandoned. because it is not easy. So as such, barakallahu feekum brothers, we must not understand i'tikaf to mean bringing your sleeping bag and stay in the masjid. Or rather, it is to stay in the masjid with one intention, and that intention is to be alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To cut yourself totally off from anything that would make you busy from that. So the first condition is niyyah. As the Rasul said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. All actions are by intention. The second condition is the i'tikaf to be in a masjid. It cannot be in musalla, prayer halls. It must be in the masjid. So as such, if there is a conference center or community hall and they've got prayer room, you cannot do i'tikaf there. It must be in a masjid where the 5 daily prayers are performed. And some of the scholars even add Jum'ah must be performed, so that it stops the individual from going out for Salatul Jum'ah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. While you're making i'tikaf, وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. So this is the shahid, that it must be done in the masjid. And that masjid must be a masjid where the jama'ah is performed, not musalla. And as such, for the woman even, it is not allowed for her to do i'tikaf in her musalla. If she has got a musalla in her house, it is not. Or another musalla outside somewhere else. Rather, it must be done in the masjid. Can a person make intention or promise to make i'tikaf in a specific masjid? It is not allowed for a person to make another, to say that, oh Allah, if you such and such, I shall make i'tikaf in such a masjid except in the 3 masajid. In Mecca, Masjid al-Haram; in Medina, Masjid Nabawi; and Al-Aqsa. These are the only 3 masajid in which you can do this. Similarly, the individual is not allowed to travel to make i'tikaf, for any other masajid other than the masajid that are within his city. Meaning that if a person nowadays, we've got certain masajids where people have put certain significance because of their group or hizb, whatever is the headquarter is based there. So they rather, or there's a big crowd, they rather go there and do i'tikaf. Like a person, you will find people who will leave Sheffield and they will say, we're going to do i'tikaf in Dewsbury. This is batil, it's unacceptable. Similarly, people who will go to other masajid, whether it's in Birmingham or London or other places that they think is a big mosque, there's a lot of activities going on or so on, it is not allowed. As the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لا تشد الرحال إلا إلى 3 مساجد. Do not be ready or travel, gear up get your luggage ready for you to travel. لا تشد الرحال إلا إلى ثلاث مساجد. To not travel to do a specific ibadah like this except to these three masajid. Except to these three masajid. Masjid al-Haram, Masjid Nabawi and Masjid al-Aqsa. You can go to Dewsbury or other masajid to listen to a lecture, so on. Or London or Birmingham or to listen to muhadara. But for you to say, I'm going to perform specific ibadah, specifically this, then you are not allowed, as the Rasul ﷺ mentioned in the hadith. The person who is making i'tikaf must not go out and leave the place in which he's doing i'tikaf in. So this is now takes us to that which negates the i'tikaf. The i'tikaf must be with niyyah and it must be done in the masjid. And the conditions of it is that you must make the niyyah and you must do it in the masjid. What negates the i'tikaf and this is one, to have intercourse with your wives. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden this. وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. Or by ejaculating while you touch your spouse, or you make yourself ejaculate. All of these things negate the i'tikaf. Similarly, that which negates i'tikaf from this is going out from the mu'takif, from the place in which you're doing the i'tikaf in, that which is not necessary. So you are allowed going out from the i'tikaf is of three types. Going out for that which is necessary. Like previously the masajid did not have the facilities that they have nowadays. Water, toilets and so on. So if you needed to go and relieve yourself, this you are allowed. If you needed water to drink and no one to bring it to you, or food to eat and no one to bring it to you, similarly you are allowed this as well, to go out from your i'tikaf to get something to eat and something to drink. And to get also some medicine if you are ill. The second type of going out is to go out for the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like to follow janazah, to visit a sick person. In this case, the scholars they say that you are only allowed if you had already made this shart in your niyyah, condition in your niyyah, to say, oh Allah, in your niyyah that you say you're going to visit a person who is sick, or if there is a janazah, you're going to follow it. If you have not made such a niyyah, then you must remain in your i'tikaf and you're not allowed to go out. It will negate your i'tikaf if you go out. The third is for you to go out خروج لأمر تافه, something which is not necessary, كالخروج للبيع والشراء, Like for you to go out to buy and sell, that's not necessary. So you might find a person who will just go to Tesco to get something to drink. He likes fizzy drink tonight, so he goes and goes there. Or something sweet from the local shop. This negates your i'tikaf. Similarly, talking on the phone, going out saying I need to have a private conversation with the missus, going out from the vicinity of the masjid, also negates your i'tikaf. If a person negates his i'tikaf, is there anything on him? Is he sinning? No. Because he, at the beginning, he was what? Hur. It was sunnah. He chose to do this and now he chose to go out from it. What has he lost? The ajr. The ajr he has lost. So this ibadah was not wajib upon him in the first place. So as such, you are, or the person is the Amir Nafsi. He is the one who chooses and controls himself. While you're doing i'tikaf, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to read Quran. Keep away from ma la ya'ni, that which does not concern you. Unfortunately, you will find, as I said to you previously, it is not easy for the ibadah itself, the i'tikaf is not easy. And some things that you find is that a person will intend or will say and convince themselves they're going to do i'tikaf, and they will look for a masjid where there is lots of people, or where their friends are going. Where are you going to make i'tikaf? So then it becomes sleepover. Chatting, sitting in corners. This is what happens. Rather, if the person was serious, he would look for the place where no one knows him, secluded, or empty of masajids, and rather busy himself because he wants to cut himself off from the dunya and anything that will busy him. A person who is in his i'tikaf, as we said, barakallah feekum, is not even allowed to sit around this kind of dars. The people in the masjid who come, you shouldn't be speaking to them except that which is necessary. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is that person will be doing i'tikaf, and he will be sitting there with the person chatting what's happening and everything, including football being talked about. And in some of the masajid also, it's as though there is a competition between them. So they will say, and they actually have seen this, Saudi, people who are doing i'tikaf, they've got cards. They're given, they put a card here. So when you come to the masjid, you can see a person who's doing i'tikaf, mu'takif, they're written on him, to be recognized. And anyone who's got this, he's got a buffet, free food, for iftar and suhoor and so on. And all of these things are things which they have the right intention to encourage the people to do this ibadah. But it could backfire, which is that the people might do this ibadah for the wrong reasons. For the wrong reasons. And one of the things, even it might be small, the number who does it, we should be encouraging is ikhlas, sincerity. You're not going to get no benefit, no return from the people, no thank you. Because this is an ibadah that you're doing for no one else but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no one else is going to benefit from it except you. It is in your own benefit. So as such, you make the intention to do this ibadah properly. So those of you, barakallahu feekum, who are doing i'tikaf now, if your intention was previously wrong, then please correct it. If you came to spend time with your friends and kill time, then correct that. If you have already wasted the first few hours of your i'tikaf on your mobile phone or chit-chatting, again, change that. Wallahi, it is not easy for you to do i'tikaf. But rather than being here 10 days, 5 days of chit-chatting, try and do 1 day of proper i'tikaf that you seclude yourself. Seclusion. You seclude yourself and you put yourself and your mind and your heart is both directed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you are not doing anything except contemplation, dua, recitation of the Quran, and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So barakallah feekum, brothers, try and please correct your i'tikaf and encourage one another. And if you see a person who is busying himself in things that does not concern him, like talking and so on, please advise them. And inshallah we'll end there. سبحانك الله بحمدك وتبارك اسمك وتعالى جل وعلا غيرك.